What's up guys, man here, welcome back to another skincare fetishist pleasing episode. Recently, during a session of quite intense 8C plus projecting, I acquired a skin injury a lot of us climbers probably know too well, I think. A split. The geography is the distal interphalangeal joint on my left index finger here, as you can see. I haven't gotten one of these in quite a while actually. I'll try to come up with some potential reasons for that in the prevention section later on in the video. Anyway, I figured now that I have one again, I might as well document it, how I treated it and how the recovery process went. So let's have a look. Firstly, I want to mention that this is not how the injury looked like initially. This thing is already about 2 days old and actually started off as a small tiny pulling split which emerged due to great amount of tension essentially applied to the skin whilst crimping a tiny edge on that project, coupled with a weak spot on the skin which was already present. The problem with this kind of injury is that it creates this sort of weak spot on your skin surface, and if you just do nothing about it, and still keep climbing, which is essentially what I did after the initial stage of my case here, chances are it's gonna rip open again and again, gets bigger, get more painful and annoying, for which my case again is a great example for. Now it essentially forces me to take action since it's now quite big and not something that is easily ignored while climbing anymore. Although it is possible to climb even with that, as we're gonna see. So what can we do to facilitate healing without necessarily having to stop climbing? Well, first of all, we somehow have to reduce the prominence of that weak spot we've created. Kinda similar to that nail split injury thing which I already made a video about. Splits are skin injuries and all injuries drive up local inflammation to speed up cell division, get nutrients and immune cells to the area to ultimately facilitate healing. And an interesting side story here maybe, I've had the case in the past where a mere surface skin injury, so to say, reawakened and, as I thought, already healed deeper tissue pulley injury from the past for a short time, which was close by, just by increasing the inflammation of the area. All of a sudden I could feel a little pain in that pulley again as well. So that goes to show how powerful these inflammation signals can be and how much permanent healing and repairing of tissues actually goes on pretty much outside of our consciousness. Anyway, inflammation encourages rebuilding of that first layer of the skin in the split, but it also encourages building of thick callus walls surrounding the split. I hope you can see that here in the demonstrated example, thereby creating this prominent crack and upholding potential for the split to be ripped open again in the near future. So the first step is to get out your nail clipper and try to remove as much of that surrounding callus as necessary to create a surface which can then be nicely sanded down with sandpaper to almost the level of the split, which is the next step, as you can see. Doesn't matter if it bleeds or hurts a bit, priority is to get down to the level of that split to reduce the prominence of that weak spot as much as possible. So I actually did that pretty much right before an outdoor bouldering session, and what I'm gonna show you now is how I tape this kind of stuff to be able to climb without having the injury get much worse or affecting performance a lot. For those who don't know my taping philosophy yet, I only use tape for surface injuries, never for deep tissue stuff, because I don't think it's particularly useful in those cases and there are actually some cons to that. I've talked about that in other videos. And since I haven't had splits for a longer time, I therefore had pretty much no use for tape at all, which is why I now only have access to this kind of shitty narrow piece of tape that I found in some dark dirty corner of my room. Anyway, it works despite that. Simply wrap the tape around the joint, starting full width of the finger at the top, then going down in a slightly tilted to the front manner, going over the split so that it's covered by the center of the tape, then back up on the other side in a slightly tilted to the back manner, and then down one more time in a straight manner, closing it off at the top again with full width of the finger. Very simple construction. The tiltedness, so to say, foresees that the tape will be pulled to the front during climbing and thereby mitigates negative effects from that, like the whole tape coming off during an attempt or something. It works very well in my experience. Now to the actual purpose of the tape. Most people think the tape now holds the two edges of the split together and prevents further cracking that way. However, a piece of tape like that would never be able to accomplish such a task for more than say 2-3 serious climbing moves, especially on crimps, after which it is usually already a bit loose, Here's what it actually does. By providing an additional layer on top of the skin, it keeps the underlying skin moist and therefore flexible, protects it from chalk and rock, and prevents further cracking that way. If you tape it the way I demonstrated, it could be that you only have to renew the tape once or twice per session. Actually, I renewed mine once in a 3-hour quite intense bouldering session, but of course it depends also on what kind of holes are involved and so on, and if I'd be really at my limit where I need as much friction as possible and want to be on the safe side to not lose the tape during an attempt, I'd simply renew it before every attempt. But yeah, obviously that takes a lot of tape.
It's good.
So let's see what the injury looked like after the session. When pulling the tape off, we can clearly see its moisturizing effect on the skin despite the shitty tape quality. I mean, probably it would have been better for healing to just simply rest, but hey, I think the injury didn't get much worse and I got a good session in, so that's clearly a win. Back home, when the skin dried again, I further removed some callus, this time with a freshly sharpened knife since I couldn't grab it with the nail clipper anymore, and again some sandpaper usage as well to really get down to level. Now, since we're done climbing and we don't want to have tape on 24/7, especially considering that some people actually react a bit allergic to that kind of stuff, I think it's the glue which gives them problems, we need something else that keeps the split moist and flexible, prevents further cracking when we move the finger during normal life, and who knows, maybe even speeds up healing a bit. Here comes an absolute gem tip, which the vegans will unfortunately be furious about: raw subcutaneous animal fat. This is from sheep and it works just amazingly. By the way, works just as well on dry, cracky lips and as skin cream for hands and all the other, more ladylike stuff. This is what they used back in the old days before the emerging of synthetics and all the like, which you now buy in stores and pharmacies. And also works far better than any climbing specific stuff I tried, like for example Climb On. In fact, to share another detail with you here, with Climb On I had the feeling that my skin would stay uncomfortably oily for such a long time that I had to be careful with applying it close to the next session. I had to wait many hours before I could climb again, although I already used very little at a time. With this stuff it's much different. I can slather it on quite carelessly and it's pretty much gone after an hour, yet the skin still feels amazing afterwards, and if you want you can either go for another treatment or start your climbing session right away. I suppose that is because the fat composition of that unadulterated subcutaneous fat is closer to that of our own skin, therefore it diffuses more completely and rapidly into the skin, taking fat-soluble vitamins and probably other nutrients which are actually present here with it, and moisturizes and facilitates healing that way. Kinda goes hand in hand with my impression that plant oils consumed via food always had a very noticeable negative effect on my performance of an upcoming climbing session, which is why I avoided them for the most part, even when I was a vegan. Whereas this seems to be much less of a problem with animal fats. I can eat them much closer to upcoming sessions. It just seems to be more of a burden on the metabolism to make plant oils utilizable for our body compared to animal fats, which are already much closer to our own fat composition for obvious reasons. I've talked about this in other videos already in case you're interested in that kind of stuff. Now it's time for bed and let the stuff heal. This is 24 hours later. I had a rest day. During the day I refreshed the fat a couple of times and we can see significant improvement already. The redness went down quite a bit and I can feel that bending the finger doesn't really hurt in an uncomfortable way anymore. I still can feel the split, but it's like a comfortable feeling of tension on the skin when bending the finger. And I personally believe that at this point it might even be a good idea to move the finger around a bit. Give those skin cells the necessary stimuli to create proper flexible collagen fibers again and restore functionality of that area of skin. It's got quite an impressive task if you think about it. It has to resist a lot of stress as it bends and stretches all the time. Any other material would suffer fatigue failure quite quickly, but not our skin, at least if it's nourished properly. Here we are around 18 hours later, right before another actually pretty good boulder session, this time indoors, looking pretty good, but to be on the safe side I decided to tape also for this session because, when chalk gets on and dries it out again, who knows what's gonna happen. And here again, in the morning after that, I think we're now quite over the hill, so to say. Which leads me to the prevention section of this video. Interestingly, kinda isochronal to the left index finger split, something similar happened on my right index finger, just lagging a few days behind, which allowed me to catch it a bit sooner, so to say. While filming my left finger for this video, I was also taking shots of my right finger simultaneously to see if I can prevent development of that thing into the stage the left finger had gotten by then. Here we can see the right index. It is clearly visible that there is a weak spot in between that callus and the skin of the fingertip, which could just give by upon serious stress via holding a super bad crimp, for example, like the left side did essentially. It just so happened that I didn't try anything project-wise that would apply that kind of stress to the finger, which I think is why it held up so far. Anyway, the first point I want to get at with regards to prevention, sometimes it seems like your body literally wants the split. It lays out collagen fibers in the skin in a different way than before, creating this strange weak spot which then is just so prone to split, and as if it would need it to get back on track, consequently it rips open at some point, kicks you into split mode for a short period of time, to at some point heal and hopefully have great skin again afterwards. Of course, that's not the full truth, but it could appear like that sometimes. The truth is that I recently added a certain kind of hangboard training back into my routine, which probably caused the strange growing pattern of the skin on both fingers, on all fingers actually, just hit the index fingers first. And this is also a good explanation to why it happened so simultaneously on both sides. So what did I do on the right side to prevent it from developing into a proper split? Well, you might have guessed it, pretty much the same strategy as on the left side, removing excess skin with the nail clipper, sanding the thing down to where future cracking potential is minimized, and treating it with the fat as well on rest days to keep things soft and flexy, not dry and cracky. However, it needs to be pointed out that despite that treatment, the weak spots stayed in the skin even until the left side was already pretty much healed, as you can see, simply because the collagen was synthesized that way by my body all the time, and there's really nothing I could do about that, just trying to avoid super intense crimps on the right to not open it up. On the left side, as soon as it ripped open, the tension on the skin was decreased, the injury triggered, inflammation goes up, additional skin is being formed, which will be then more solid, hopefully, once the healing is completed. And then you've got something to work with, so to say, and you eventually get over it. Kinda gives you this injuries are sometimes necessary to progress impression, which I talked about in other videos regarding inner structures and stuff already. So yeah, prevention definitely centers around reducing splitting potential by getting rid of excess skin with nail clipper and sandpaper, and keeping stuff moist and flexy by using tape during sessions and fat the rest of the time. But did I not get splits for so long because I did that permanently? Not necessarily. It could well be that it was just because I took a longer break from hangboarding, and now that I did it again, I shocked the system a bit, causing a folding up of callus and strange skin growth, and thereby caused the split. It could also be that because I did so much outdoor climbing and so little indoor climbing recently, I got kind of split resistant, and now that I'm back home and the number of indoor sessions goes up again, the splits come back. It could also be that a change in diet is connected with it. After all, it would make sense that overall skin quality improves if you not only get those fats topically, but also internally, and I personally think that this actually plays quite a significant role here too. It could also be that now that the first few colder days are rolling in again, skin becomes more hard, crystally, and therefore naturally more cracky, simply leaving you with a higher split chance whilst rock climbing. It might also be a combination of all the just mentioned factors, I guess what I want to say is that a lot more factors are involved in proper skin than just great skincare, and they of course also play a role when it comes to these kind of injuries. Well, we're in this video for quite some time now. I gotta say it was quite fun to philosophize about splits for a bit. Let me know about your tips and tricks for split treatment and prevention down below, and drop a like if you've got something from the episode. That's always helpful, as you know. Take care, especially skincare, not too seriously, and I'll see you soon in the next one. Bye.